You've probably noticed something hard to put into words. The same groceries you've been buying for years somehow feel more expensive. That utility bill that never bothered you much before now makes you pause. The cost of keeping your car running seems to weigh on you differently than it used to, and you might be wondering if you're imagining it or if something has fundamentally changed. The answer is both. Yes, things are getting more expensive in real terms, but there's also something else happening. Your relationship with money shifts when you cross that 65 threshold, and today we're going to talk honestly about why everyday expenses feel heavier after retirement age, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Number 1. The psychology of fixed income. When you were working, money had a certain quality to it. If you needed more, at least theoretically, you could work overtime, take on a side project, or push for a raise. Your income had flexibility built into it, even if you rarely used that flexibility. It existed as a possibility in the back of your mind, and that possibility created a sense of security that you probably didn't even realize was there. After 65, for most people, that changes completely. Your income becomes fixed. Social Security sends the same amount every month. If you have a pension, it's the same number. Any retirement savings you're drawing from have to last, so you're careful about how much you take. Suddenly, money isn't something that flows in when you need more of it. It's a finite resource that you're managing, and that psychological shift changes everything. It's not that you're actually poorer than you were, though some people are. It's that your relationship with every dollar has changed. When you spend $20 on something now, you're not just spending $20. You're spending $20 that won't be there next month or next year, and there's no easy way to replace it. That weight, that awareness of finitude, makes every purchase feel different. Number 2, the erosion of purchasing power. Now let's talk about what's happening in the real world with prices, because you're not imagining that things cost more. Over the past few years, we've seen inflation rates that haven't been common since the 1980s. Even when inflation calms down, prices don't usually go back down. They just stop rising as quickly. So if eggs went from $2 to $5, they might stay at $4.50. You're still paying more than double what you used to. For younger people who are still working, wages often rise to compensate for inflation, at least partially. Not always, and not perfectly. But there's some adjustment happening. For you, if you're living on Social Security, there is a cost of living adjustment each year, but it's based on calculations that don't always match your real-world experience. The government measures inflation one way, but your personal inflation might be completely different. Healthcare costs, for example, tend to rise faster than general inflation, and you're probably using more healthcare now than you were at 40. Housing costs, utilities, insurance, groceries, all of these have their own inflation rates, and they don't always align with the modest increase you see in your monthly check. So you're not wrong when you feel like your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. It doesn't. Number 3. The hidden cost creep. There's something else happening that's easy to miss because it happens gradually. The baseline cost of simply existing has increased in ways that aren't always obvious. Think about how many subscriptions and services have become standard parts of life that barely existed 20 years ago. Internet service isn't optional anymore. Cell phones went from a luxury to a necessity. Streaming services replaced cable, but now there are 8 different streaming services, and you need 3 of them to watch what you want. These small monthly charges add up in ways that are almost invisible until you sit down and actually count them. $10 here, $15 there, and suddenly you're spending $150 a month on services that you didn't even have line items for in your budget 10 years ago. Each one seems reasonable in isolation, but together they create a constant drain that makes everything else feel tighter. Then there's the way products themselves have changed. Companies have gotten very good at something called shrinkflation. Your coffee can is the same price, but it's now 11 ounces instead of 12. The package looks identical, but there's less in it. Your garbage bags, your paper towels, your box of crackers, they're all subtly smaller or contain fewer items. But the price stayed the same, or went up. You feel this, even if you can't quite identify it, because you're going back to the store more often than you used to. Number 4. The healthcare wait. Let's address the elephant in the room, which is healthcare. Medicare covers a lot, and you're grateful for it. but it doesn't cover everything. There are copays and deductibles, and that 20% you're responsible for on Part B services. There's Part D for prescriptions, and that has its own costs and coverage gaps. There are supplemental policies that many people need to fill in the holes, and those premiums aren't cheap. If you're taking multiple medications, even with insurance, the monthly cost can run hundreds of dollars. Dental work isn't covered by original Medicare at all, and if you need a crown or dentures or any serious dental care, you're looking at thousands of dollars out of pocket. Vision care, hearing aids. These are things you're more likely to need as you age, and they're expenses that can arrive suddenly and demand immediate attention. The stress of healthcare costs isn't just about the money itself. It's about the unpredictability. You can budget for your regular prescriptions and your insurance premiums, but you can't budget for the unexpected diagnosis, or the fall that requires physical therapy, or the emergency room visit that seemed necessary at the time, but resulted in a $1,500 bill. This uncertainty makes every other expense feel more precarious, because you're always keeping a mental reserve for the medical surprise you know is eventually coming. Number 5. The isolation tax. There's something that doesn't get talked about enough, which is how being older can actually make things more expensive in subtle ways. When you were younger and more mobile, maybe you could shop around for the best prices. You'd drive across town for the cheaper grocery store or wait for sales. Now, if driving is harder or you have mobility issues, you might end up shopping at whatever's closest, even if it's more expensive. You might rely more on delivery services, which charge fees and markups. You might need to pay people to do things you used to do yourself, like yard work or home repairs or even just getting to appointments. Each of these makes sense individually, but together they create what you might call an isolation tax, where the natural limitations that come with aging cost you money. Social isolation plays a role here, too. When you were working, you had free entertainment built into your day through workplace interactions and friendships. Now you might need to spend money to get out of the house, see people, and stay engaged with life. Coffee with friends, senior center activities, even just the gas to drive to see your grandkids. These are expenses that contribute to your quality of life, but also add up in ways they didn't when social interaction was built into your work routine. Number 6. The comparison trap. Part of why expenses feel heavier is that you're comparing your current situation to your own past, and that comparison isn't always fair to yourself. 20 years ago, you might have been at peak earning years with a paid-off house and kids who were financially independent. You had momentum and resources and options. Now you're living on a fixed income, possibly dealing with unexpected costs, and the contrast feels stark. You might also be comparing yourself to others your age who seem to be doing better. They're traveling or helping their grandchildren with college or living in a nice retirement community, and you're watching your grocery budget carefully. Social media, and even just conversations with friends can create this sense that everyone else figured out retirement except you, and that adds an emotional weight to every dollar you spend. But here's the truth. Most people are struggling with these same feelings more than they let on. The friends who seem financially comfortable might be quietly worried about their own situations. The retirement lifestyle you see portrayed in advertisements and media isn't the reality for the majority of Americans over 65. You're not failing at retirement because money feels tight. You're experiencing what most people your age are experiencing, and there's no shame in that. Number 7. The loss of financial margin. When you were working, you probably had some financial margin in your life. Not necessarily a lot, but enough that unexpected expenses could be absorbed without creating a crisis. The car needed new tires. It was annoying but manageable. The water heater died. You put it on a credit card and paid it off over a few months. The system was flexible. Now that margin might be gone or significantly reduced. Your income is what it is. Your regular expenses take up most of it, and there isn't much cushion for the unexpected. So when something breaks or comes due, it's not just the cost itself that's stressful. It's the knowledge that absorbing this cost means something else doesn't get paid, or you're dipping into savings you can't easily replace, or you're going into debt that will be hard to pay off. This absence of margin is exhausting. It means you can never fully relax about money because you're always one car repair or one medical bill away from a real problem. Every expense carries this additional weight of potential crisis, and that chronic low-level financial stress affects everything. It affects your sleep, your health, your relationships, and your ability to enjoy the life you have. Number 8. Practical perspectives. So what do you do with all of this? First, understand that acknowledging these feelings doesn't mean you're weak or bad with money. It means you're dealing with a real structural challenge that millions of Americans your age are facing. The system we have for retirement in this country works well for some people, but it leaves a lot of people feeling financially vulnerable, and that's not your personal failure. Second, track your spending for a month or two with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Where is the money actually going? You might find surprises. Maybe you're spending more on convenience than you realize, and some of that could be redirected. Maybe there are subscriptions you forgot about. Maybe your insurance policies haven't been reviewed in years, and you're paying more than you need to. Knowledge gives you power, and you can't make good decisions without knowing your real numbers. Third, look at your fixed expenses, the big ones, and ask yourself if there are changes worth making. Housing is usually the biggest expense. Are you in a place that still makes sense for your life and your budget? Utilities can often be reduced through assistance programs specifically designed for seniors. Insurance, both health, auto, and home, should be reviewed regularly because you might qualify for discounts or better rates that weren't available before. Number 9. Building small buffers. Even on a tight budget, see if there's any way to build small financial buffers that can absorb shocks. Even $25 or $50 a month put aside can become $300 or $600 over a year, and that money sitting there, knowing it exists for emergencies, reduces the weight of everyday expenses because you have something backing you up. Look into community resources that you might not be using. Senior centers often offer free or low-cost meals and activities. Food banks aren't just for people who are homeless or destitute. They're for anyone who needs help with food costs, and there's no shame in using them if it helps your budget. Area agencies on aging can connect you with programs for utility assistance, prescription help, and other supports that you might qualify for but don't know about. Consider whether there are small ways to bring in additional money that don't feel burdensome. Not everyone can or wants to work, but sometimes turning a hobby into a small income stream, or doing occasional consulting in your former field, or even simple tasks through online platforms can bring in an extra $100 or $200 a month. That money doesn't solve everything, but it can be the difference between constant stress and manageable tension. Number 10. Reframing your relationship with money. Finally, and this might sound strange, but try to reframe your relationship with money in this phase of life. Yes, it's more limited. Yes, expenses feel heavier. But you also have something you didn't have when you were younger. Clarity about what actually matters. You've lived long enough to know the difference between what you need and what advertisers want you to think you need. You don't have to keep up with anyone. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to live your life according to some imagined standard of what retirement should look like. If you're safe, if you're fed, if you have a place to live and people you care about, you have the essentials. Everything else is negotiable. This doesn't mean giving up on comfort or joy. It means being intentional about where your limited resources go, directing them toward what genuinely improves your life rather than what you think you're supposed to want. Sometimes the heaviness of expenses lifts a bit when you stop fighting against your reality and start working with it instead. The truth is, everyday expenses feel heavier after 65 because they are heavier, both practically and psychologically. Your income is fixed, inflation is real, unexpected costs hit harder when you have less margin, and the awareness that you can't easily replace money you spend changes how every purchase feels. But you're not helpless here. You can track your spending, adjust your fixed costs, tap into resources designed to help, and, most importantly, you can permit yourself to live within your means without shame. This isn't the retirement you might have imagined, but it's the life you have. And there's dignity in managing it wisely and honestly. The weight you're feeling is real, but it doesn't have to crush you. Take it one expense at a time, one decision at a time, and remember that you've handled hard things before. You can handle this too. Thanks for spending this time with me. If this gave you clarity or comfort, please like the video and subscribe.